And we are live on the pipeline for episode 15, switching up the format for this episode, doing it live on Twitter Spaces. And of course, it'll be available on all podcast platforms, as the pipeline always is, starting tomorrow once we have a chance to process the recording here. Super, super lucky to have Bold Leonidas on here today. Thanks for coming on, Bold. Really appreciate you hopping in to join the conversation on the pipeline.
Oh, just realised I was muted and I was talking to myself. I actually just broke the chair that I was sitting on, which is obviously a testament to my brilliance at this point. All right, hold on.
Yeah, we're off.
I've got a new chair.
We're off to an extremely hot start here. We have a broken chair.
Literally, it was as though it knew we had begun speaking. I just fell through. This is a sign that I'm in a chair too long, drawing every day. Clearly.
Well, at some point, sacrifices must be made, I guess. And it's certainly awesome that you're breaking chairs on Spaces with the pipeline. So
it's a rock and roll move. People used to throw TVs out of hotel windows. Now that influencers are breaking chairs on Spaces. This is how we roll now.
Right on. We're gonna bring up intern as well to co-host today's show. He is a legend. He needs no introduction. But yeah, we've got a great crew today, and certainly Leonidas, you've absolutely exploded over the past year or so. It's been truly, truly wild to see and wild to follow along with. So it's been a ton of fun seeing your content, and now absolutely honored to have you on here today so we can kind of learn a little bit more about that backstory and what your creative process has been like.
Yeah, it's funny. I honestly, I said to my missus before, it's almost like, because I was on Rec Radio the other week and they didn't tell me what they were going to ask me. And then you sent through your questions, because obviously you're more organized than those layabouts that OSF and Mando and that. But one of the things you said was how did you start with the comics? And I said to her, I don't actually know. I don't kind of remember a sort of singular moment, but I guess that's how things go, isn't it? I don't remember being oh my God, I'm going to begin now. I started, and I said the other day, I actually had a tweet going out that this has been a year now that I've done at least one every day. And I actually said kind of underneath it, before that I was inconsistent. And what it was I was just kind of doing them as I got a moment, as a whatever. And I was just kind of I started out the one that kind of started it. Because the very first one I did was, if you're old enough to remember, I don't even know how to say it, that Digidaikoku or whatever. The one who Gabriel Layden, who ended up buying a spot at the Super Bowl.
Sure.
A couple of years ago, wasn't it? And he was paid whatever, $7 million, didn't he, for a 30-second spot at the Super Bowl? But he just kept saying anon. And then I just did I drew him and sort of said anon ? And that was it. And then I edited it and I went, actually, it's funnier if he looks like Pepe. So I just edited it. Still had his suit because he had this iconic PFP. And he blasted to 1 million followers overnight. And then now he's just not really around that I see. But that was kind of the start. And then a couple of days later, there was the Vitalik penis picture, which we've later learned was a rolled up USB cable, apparently. It's that spurring Allegedly. The line. Is that a USB Allegedly. Cable in your pocket, or are you happy to see me? But yeah, and it was the Vitalik one. Once I did that one, I was this kind of feels good. And then I just kind of did them kind of sporadically. So I actually started in August 2022, and I probably did one every. I probably did 30 or 40 in the month, but it wasn't every day. It wasn't like, every 24-hour period, I wasn't hitting one until, February 19th. And then I just made a kind of thing of like, okay, every day I'm going to hit one. So essentially what I do now is, once I do one, I basically start a 24-hour timer in my head. And then I'm like, right, well, I've got to deliver one within that time. So they're always drawn new. Like, I'm a bit stupid in that way, probably. Like, I never pull anything from previous stuff. I always start with a blank thing. Like, I never copy over from previous comics, which is probably idiotic in terms of the time it takes me. But it was part of when I started. Like, I've always been a traditional artist, if you like, and AI was just killing it. Like, AI was just too good. So I was like, well, there's no point anymore, like, in trying to do this art. Like, people are just banging out these collections and whatever. And I was like, there's no point in all this anymore. Like, even somebody the other day, I saw something by, I think it was like Barrett Kimo or whatever, and he was saying, this is my favorite AI photography collection. I'm like, what the fuck? What? What? Just take a bit. Like, it just does my head in. So like, I'm purposefully the antithesis of AI. Like, as in, I leave in my mistakes and they're human errors. Like, as in, I do edit and things afterwards, and I do try my best, but like, I leave stuff in for that reason. So yeah, there was a big part of it was just kind of not anti-AI. Like, I welcome the uses for AI and whatever, but in terms of art, I was like, how do you prove that you're a person anymore? And so yeah, it just became this thing of like coming up with timely, like, kind of jokes and stuff that I was like, AI can't do this. And then it was just that thing of like, I always remember being a kid, and you get the whatever, your paper, like, obviously I'm showing my age here, so paper is this thing in real life, but you'd get the paper and you like, I'd always flick to the comics, like the funnies in the paper. And as I was scrolling through Twitter, it just felt kind of lifeless. And so, yeah, it all of these things tied together were what sort of got me started, I guess.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I mean, I think anything that, ultimately blossoms into scale and really like you find your ground and run with it, like, all these things really seem to start off organically. And it was certainly the case with this podcast. The pipeline spun out of the Monad community and just trying to find ways to add value. And as you experiment and grow over time, that consistency piece becomes so important in gaining momentum. But before we get too deep into things, I want to introduce our co-host who has hopped up here. He certainly needs no introduction. At Intern, working on ecosystem growth here at Monad. Intern, thank you for joining us again today, as always.
Yeah, Dan, thanks for having me again, as always. Bold, honored to get to share the stage with you, man.
Yeah,
I have been admiring your work for a very long time now. I would say one of the earliest followers. I'm less active now, but I've done a lot on the meme side. So anytime I feel like I saw what you were doing, I was like, this is some serious grade A talent, like memes, art mixed into crypto lore, and just have, a ton of respect for what you're building, dude. This is seriously awesome.
It's do you know what's mental? The other day, people followed and then messaged me, and that was like the first. Somebody said like, when did you feel like you'd made it on a previous thing I was on? And I still don't in a way, but that that did blow me away, because it was kind of like, and he messaged, it was super nice as well. And the thing is, I'm hoping people isn't going to go back through my stuff and see that I've given him shit a couple of times, but as in, I always try and keep it sort of fair game. But it was just mad, like, as in, when you start these things and the same as you're saying, Danny, with the pipeline, like, your first thing is never going to be your best. Like, the first pipeline, it's not like people are going to look back and go, oh my God, the first episode was the best thing he ever did. And I really feel like, I think only only counter to that is sometimes bands. Let's be honest, the first album's the best. Like Arctic Monkeys never beat their first, in my opinion. But like the first sort of thing is never typically the best with this stuff, and only by iterating and growing. Like my early stuff, like Intern, you did follow me early on, but like my really early stuff was like it look, I say it's embarrassing to look back at, but it's kind of not. Like at the end of the day, putting yourself out there and being okay with being like, you know, refining what you got because it's not hitting the mark, it's not hitting the quality, is it's a huge thing to be sort of comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was hitting on the AI component, right? I feel like probably about a year ago, people like really started producing AI art. And there was this thing where like everyone else's art is human, but this guy makes AI art. And now it's almost become the opposite, where it's like it's so easy to prompt an image creation that it's like, okay, everyone's using AI art, but like Bold is like doing this by hand. So the flip has been so quick, but I look at it as like, yeah, Bold is the non-AI artist, which a year ago was not even a title. But now it's just so funny to think how far that side of things has come. But I think you're losing.
It wasn't even an accolade, was it?
Yeah, there are a lot of people that probably never start to develop their own like human-made art because AI is so easy now. So I think it really will like stand the test of time, right? Be Lindy because it is a human drawing it. There's a connection there that like can't be can't be handed over to some AI creation. The other thing that I wanted to throw out, right? I actually had written down as one of the things I wanted to ask you about was Beeple specifically, because the overlap of like the one creation every 24 hours, right? Like he's famous for that. That's his thing. So I was going to ask if there was any inspiration drawn from it, or if it was kind of just, you know, it came about independently. So people, I was like, what are the chances here? So yeah,
Well, look, the funny thing is like Beeple's, like, I really do genuinely, and I know, look, people have been giving him like a lot of crap recently for all the dick pics and stuff, but Beeple is like, he's just like it's obviously an inspiration for me getting started. My thing is I don't do one, like I do a minimum of one every 24 hours. That's where I differentiate myself a little from people. I have done, and I think I said it again on that post the other day, but like I've done 1,500 in the year, I think, individual comics. So there was a point where it was like, as in it was definitely borderline obsessive, but it was because I was like, this is so like, as in every new one that I do kind of refines and sort of improves. So I really wanted to kind of speed run that first bit. So I was banging out like 10 a day for like a month. And I remember speaking to someone and then being like, one a day is enough. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, not right now. Not if I want to improve and sort of get faster. So I was just getting so many out. And even like yesterday I did 2. I'll typically do 2 or 3 in a day. But one of my aims early on was to overtake people in terms of the raw number of like everydays, which obviously with him with like a 5-6 year head start, it's like a big shot. As in, I know he did his whatever 5,000 everydays thing, and that was like 2 years ago now. So I've still got a way to go, but that was so look, it was both inspired by and driven to kind of go alongside and go toe to toe. I mean, obviously the comparisons are very complimentary, but it's always that thing of like the next insert thing here, and it's always those people moan and go, oh, I just want to be the first me, and it's like, well, no, I think I'm fairly happy to be called like the next people. It's not exactly an offense in any way, but certainly the angles that we go at are similar while being different. Like he does tend to go topical, but his is like yesterday I actually sent him once the sort of, this is it, I'm a real nerd still, And like I was like fanboying, like I was like, oh my god, it's people, like when he messaged, and the next day, like we did almost the same we did the autoglyph on one of my dailies. I did the autoglyph, and he did it in his, but I did it like 3 hours before him, thankfully, so it didn't, So I sent it through, and I was like, look, we're aligned, and I was like, you wouldn't believe how many times this has happened, but you've not seen it because you haven't seen me yet. And then literally the next day, he did the 3K for ETH. And he just did like a bull and with all diamonds and whatever poking out of it, and probably a penis hidden somewhere. And I had done obviously bold on like a little rocket going out. And I was like, this is insane that we're picking the same topics and stuff. But I guess because I'm doing more, that is more likely to happen. But there were a few days where people were sending me things and saying, I think people's copying your thing. And I don't think he was. I genuinely don't think he'd seen me. But there were ones that were so aligned. I think there was one where like because you remember when Pepe Coin got massive and everyone was kind of saying it's the new Doge. And I did one of like Pepe beating up Doge. And he did like obviously a Beeple version of that. But it was like really similar in vibe. And then the same day again, or like on the same day again in future, I did one where I'd done like the Uniswap casino, and I'd made sort of a casino looking thing and written Uniswap, and I'd done actually like lights on it it was a GIF, that one, like and people did like a casino one the same day. And so it's really weird. I think obviously naturally, because we get into the headlines and go into the stuff the same, there will be this crossover, but there have been a few like eerily similar ones. And I really don't think somebody who's creative as him is looking at some random 4,000 follower account and ripping off ideas. Like I never thought that was actually what was occurring, but there was so many crossovers. It was weird that we were kind of in sync in that way. But yeah, look, he's obviously, he's a beast, and he kind of paved the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think having alignment like that with current events, and also having the daily creation output, shows that you have a great pulse on the culture of crypto. And that's obviously super key, right? Because we've already talked about like, just get started with something and, experiment and iterate over time. And with that, you'll improve and grow. But part of what has made you so successful and so entertaining over this past year plus has been that your comics are coming out and offering a humorous, often hilarious commentary on the current events in crypto culture, which certainly folks like Beeple are doing as well and have been doing for a while. But would love to hear anything you're willing to share in terms of your background on crypto, what your crypto journey has been like, and how did you get into the space and stay so updated that it's enabled you to create like this?
So I was I kind of, the very long and short of it is that I bought some crypto and I really didn't understand it. Like, as in, I bought some Ethereum because I'd literally watched like the YouTubers and whatever, and I bought a little bit of Ethereum, and it was pretty late on. Like, I'm not one of these people who's been holding Ethereum since like $2. Like, I think I bought my first Ethereum like over $500. But I didn't have much spare cash at all at the time. Like, I bought very little. And then basically, it sat in my CoinSpot account. Like, the concept of on-chain, I just didn't understand. Like, I hadn't done, my absolutely horrendous attention span is probably beneficial in this, in what I now do, in that, like, that's why I bang the comics out, because when I post them, they're always hot off the press. Like, as in, I've literally just finished it and I post it. Like, as in, I'm very sort of get it done and sort of bang it out. But yeah, so I started and I got this like Ethereum. The concept of on chain was this, like, completely alien. And somebody said, it was one of my mates, said about NFTs and whatever, and he says you should list. So I did like traditional paintings. He was like, you should list them on OpenSea. You should put them on OpenSea. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I've got, and I was like, okay, how'd you do it? And obviously I went to list it, and it was like mind blowing to me. It was like $50 in gas or something. And I had like set up this MetaMask account and, or MetaMask wallet in my Chrome. And I was like, had no ETH in it, because I was like, oh, I just thought I had to create the wallet. And the concept of gas, like, I'd just never heard of when I first did it. So it was all to create a collection of my paintings. But obviously they were like OpenSea storefront NFTs. And I had been selling them on like a traditional art website prior and sort of posting them out to people. So I just kind of basically took photos of them and put them up on here. And like my bare hopium was that just someone, because NFTs were so hot, someone would just buy these paintings. But obviously they didn't. And obviously I hung around on the OpenSea website, and it wasn't until a few months later, one of the ones that actually really pulled me in to sort of NFTs. And I remember it being advertised like on the OpenSea homepage, and my mate, who was living in, I think he was living in Hong Kong at the time, was saying about it. But it was the Mike Tyson, Corey Van Loo collection was like one of the first sort of ones where I was like, ooh, like I genuinely like this. Like the concept of digital art, I really did find compelling and interesting. I think Corey Van Loo's style, the fact that he'd worked on that Soul film, the Pixar one. And yeah, I got really into that drop, and then I was like blown away. Like I remember I think I bought one for like, I only had like 4 or 5 ETH, and I think I bought one for like 1 point something ETH. And then obviously it goes up and down and all over the show. And then I remember being like, oh my God, this is so much money in real life. And I ended up selling it like break even after it had gone to like, it went to like 5 ETH or something insane, because Mike Tyson got all his buddies to pump it. But that was it then. It was kind of like you enter the game. And for me, the coin side and all this stuff has always been so, I guess, comparatively boring. Like when I started, I certainly, NFTs were definitely it for me. Like I couldn't see the appeal of not having a picture attached with all this stuff. Like I just couldn't follow it like the meme coins. And in fact, when I started these comics, they were almost entirely about the NFT ecosystem, and I had no idea how to. And I remember being like, I'm going to have to give up, because NFTs are really dying out, like PFP collections and stuff. People just don't care. And I remember being like, I'm going to have to stop, because NFTs are just losing all volume, like they're losing all interest. And this is if I just go down with the ship here. So I remember saying to some people, I think I've got to pivot to doing more about general crypto, and like trading as an idea and all these things. And I really just I hadn't been in that. I hadn't really bought many meme coins or anything at that point. And I kind of pivoted because I recognized that there was just no attention really left in NFTs. And so I made a conscious decision to go, okay, well, let's try and dip into that trading mindset with the comics, and dip into that kind of like, yeah, things go up, things go down kind of thing. And sort of, I've really hammered down on that. And I was like, how many times can I realistically do a comic about something going up and then something going down? And there was a point, and I was like, because I was still banging out like 4 or 5 a day. And I was like, I don't know whether I can keep this going. But then every day I just get new ideas and new stuff. And so, yeah, I've just been lucky in that way, and that like, it's just something just always comes. And I don't really know how to explain it.
As someone who has spent way more than what is probably worthwhile on crypto Twitter, there are a lot more ways to meme something going up and something going down than one might initially imagine. It's just full, right? Like the Twitter timeline is basically full of a million different ways to say this thing is going up or this thing is going down.
Even this thing is going sideways.
If nothing's happening, then there's a million ways to do that too. So, I think it's almost like look at the same thing from a million different perspectives and you're going to get a different image each time. So,
and this is it.
A
one of the
revolution.
things. Yeah, like this is one of the things, and obviously you having done memes in the past, intern, like you obviously have that kind of understanding of just kind of constantly tapping. But there was one night, and I think obviously you can look at my lore, but some people remember this one as like random people have shown up recently and go, oh, I remember this like night, and there was a Discord of this thing called like Fortunata, right? And it was some dude who full rugged, like, let's just say what really happened. And he was like a Y Combinator guy, you know how like obviously Pac-Man and Zagabond are both like Y Combinator, and he made this thing, and it was meant to be like Dungeons and Dragons, and it was pretty good. Like it started out well. He had like a $6 million funding round or something insane, and did this free mint. And anyway, they were giving away, and this is when I was low on ETH, let's be real. And they were giving away a pass for basically if you had a certain number of points or whatever, and you had to do like memes. And I did 150 memes in under a day on this thing. I just didn't stop. And I went from like, it must have been about 7 p.m. and I stayed up till 4 or 5 a.m. And my aim was to do 100, and then I just kept going. So I just kept going, and it was funny. I think that kind of like baptism of fire, that kind of like drill training, really actually got me into memes. Like as in terms of just the kind of real like the standard format ones. The guy looking back when he's holding hands with the girl, and those kind of ones. It really dug me within a night into that kind of culture. So what I had then when I started the comics, I was like, oh, no one owns these individual images. No one knows where that came from. No one knows who made that meme originally. At least I don't. With most memes, like as in, and obviously you've got the ones that are just screenshots of films that are officially owned by, like probably Universal. That one of the ones that I really like with Dodson or whatever from Jurassic Park when he's looking back and pointing at the table. And I was like, okay, well, if I run out of an idea, what I'll do is just redraw this in my style and make just a general crypto meme. And so that was like a massive like boon, because I was like, well, memes are infinite. This space is infinite in its ideas and in the scams and stuff that happen every day. So yeah, that baptism of fire into creating memes on templates mixed with the art stuff I'd done, I was kind of like, okay, I'm never going to run out here, so I can double down now. I can just say I'm going to do this, forever. And yeah, there was a massive turning point in terms of going, I can actually just reformat these pre-existing memes, but now I own it. Not like I don't own the original meme, but you can tell it's done by me. So if people share it, you can see that it's me. And this concept of owning some form of ownership of memes, I just think hadn't really been done. And that was when I kind of got really excited. And that was when I doubled down and started going, yeah, I'm doing it every day. Like it was kind of that point, I think, of no one's tried to own memes before.
Yeah, that's honestly such an awesome strategy, because literally the thing that I was about to ask, which is like very top of mind for me, like once you commit to doing something on a daily basis, then like, you really have to be consistent. And when you've put out some of the like super high quality stuff that we've seen from you, like it becomes harder and harder to top that with the next piece of content that you're producing. So I wanted to ask if you ever experience like writer's block or the equivalent for a comic artist, at least. But it sounds like the repurposing and the redrawing of classic memes has been a great outlet there for you to kind of avoid that, right?
Yeah, that's like my dumpster dig, is if I'm getting low, I'll basically scroll through pre-existing memes and something will happen, and those can tend to be fairly successful. But yeah, look, I get massive imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to do it again. I remember the first time something hit, like, and I've said this many times before, but my initial comics, I would literally like it myself, go in with my alt account for that old ass PFP collection thing, and I would get 2 likes, and that would be the end. And then I still remember the first time I hit 100 likes on a comic, and I was like determined to hit that again. I was like, I don't know whether I'll ever hit this again. And then I hit it again, and then now like the new sort of barrier has become this like 1,000 likes for me, because you have to have some metric. Like I have a real gauge on the metrics now. Like I really do watch things and see how they're taken in. Like I posted one last night that I deleted almost straight after, because I was like, this isn't hitting. People don't understand it. It's too deep. It's too niche right now. And so yeah, I do take it like stupidly seriously, I guess. But yeah, the writer's block angle definitely happens. But that is when I tend to dig into that sort of pre-existing meme templates. One of the things that I don't like as well is that I really try and take advantage of them being comics, and I try and have, like, my most successful one recently was regarding the Moonbirds acquisition by Yuga, and the way that worked was super, super visual. Like, as in, he comes in and they go, "Oh, did you buy the Bird Project?" And then he's pulling, and they were like, they would say, like, is it Pudgy Penguins? And he pulls it out of the bag and it's a Moonbird. But like, that's super visual, can only work in a comic format, and I didn't need a pre-existing meme format for that. And those are my favorite ones, where I hit the topical, but it's visual and it kind of needs to be a comic. Whereas when you've just got 2 characters and one is saying something to the other, that format of just one saying something, the other saying something, I'm like, this is just a reformat of what essentially would be like shitposting. So I have different ones that I try and pull on, and I really don't try and do any one thing 2 times in a row or for too long. Like, if I have one character saying something to another character in a single frame, my next one shouldn't look like that. My next one should be more creative or inventive or whatever. Some take me ages. Some take me like a long time, and some take like not long at all. But it doesn't matter. Like, what matters is like the variation and keeping, like, I imagine myself as my own audience, and I like want to keep people engaged and interested. Like, you don't. I hope I don't get to a point where I feel the need to include penises to sort of engage people. But like, it's seriously, like, as in, there is a pressure of like one-upmanship of yourself. Like, as in, it's one thing to keep the same quality, but it's another thing to try and improve your quality. Like, you don't want to become wallpaper. You know, you don't want to just become, oh, I've seen this guy's stuff, whatever. It's got to be fresh.
I wonder if like there's this way that like politicians often, they'll start out and then like one topic or one take just like hits very hard with their audience, so they continue to double down on it until they've become like very distinct in this clear belief. But it's really driven because that's where engagement is. I wonder if the analogous situation for one per day everyday internet artists is you build whatever you want, and then eventually everyone just trends towards penises. And that's the final state of like, there is no more clickbait.
I mean, that is my eventual plan
outside of just penises. And like, Beeple is the first one to realize it, and we're all going to get there eventually.
Yeah, it's just crypto Twitter will be renamed penis Twitter. But
I have to ask, I do have to ask, it sounds like you're at like a construction site or something right now.
This is my life. This is, I'm actually, do you know what it is? I've come out on the balcony, and this building in front of me has been built for about the last 7 years since we moved in. They just love making as much noise as possible.
Okay. Gotcha.
They're just bastards. But yes, no. Imagine if I was just a builder in my spare time.
Hearing buzzsaws,
yeah, maybe.
Crashing.
Who knows? Ooh, not
like,
doxing.
Maybe this is just a window.
Do you know what? This is funny because Danny asked, "Are you going to have your camera on?" And I was like, "I'm not looking my best. I feel like I want to wait to dox until I've had, like, do you know what I mean? I've got to get like braces or something. I've got to get those shiny American teeth to compete in the industry. Because I'm too English. But yeah, like it's funny. It's funny, like the way that I've done this for a long time, for a long time, like these comics and everything. You say like, oh, you want a building site? You should see the places that I've drawn in, like as in, because it's a level of obsession that you have to be. And I have literally drawn, and I've drawn a comic once sitting on a sink in a public bathroom because I had an idea. Like, that's the kind of level of obsession I think it takes. And so, yeah, being on a building site would probably be a more comfortable place than I've done quite a few comics. I remember when I started with Rec Guys, I was trying to drive my partner. We were driving like to the beach, and my partner was, and I was trying to draw while she drives like she's playing fucking Mario Kart. And I was trying to draw these like Rec Guys, these sort of concepts for Rec Guys, and I sent it through to them. And I look back at it now, and I'm like, it's so clear. I was driving, like I was being driven, shall we say? And yeah, some of the places that I've done them is just obscene. But I got spotted once in Melbourne. Someone came over to me, and I was just drawing outside the state library in Melbourne. And this it must have been a student came over to me, and he was like, "Oh, are you Bold Leonidas?" And I was like, "No, I just really like his stuff. I'm trying to copy it." And he was like, "Oh," and walked off. And I was like, "Shit, I've got to move. I can't have this."
That's wild. You absolutely dodged a bullet there. I don't know how most people would handle that situation, but that's a pretty good way to play it off.
Yeah, I was like, I'm just a really big fan.
Yeah,
he's amazing.
Just humble to the point of like, oh, it connected with me. But yeah. But speaking of building sites, Intern and I are on a building site right now, but a very different type of building site. We are
look at that segue.
Monad headquarters, and certainly kind of reminiscing on my own journey in the Monad community throughout most of this year, and eventually joining the team full time in December. You were one of the first amazing creators that really latched on to the Monad community, publicly supporting in the earliest days of our community. And that definitely resulted in some amazing community connections and growth across the board. But would love to hear what that experience has been like for you, and why you first decided to join the Monad community.
Well, do you know what it was? I was actually chatting to Bill. I spoke to Bill. So a couple of some of my thing, and I guess this speaks back to a question before of how am I so sort of tapped in. I'm in a very and I've said this previously, but I'm in like a really tight private group of people who've just kind of been in the space a while, and I'm very lucky with that group in that I provide absolutely no alpha. I just live there as this little frog who's like, "What's happening today, guys?" And they really early on mentioned Monad and they said, "Oh, you're joining in the poker tournament or something with Bill today." And obviously for me in Australia, timing wise, it's just never good. Like almost everything occurs while I'm asleep. I even miss like so many sort of whitelists and things like that just by being asleep. But Monad was one of those ones. It was that thing of like, I spoke to Bill first, and it was, I guess the humanness to it all. I think so many of these things are shrouded in mystery. And I think that's really bad long term. I mean, we can see that with the NFT space, in that like all these guys who, were completely anonymous and promised roadmaps and blah, blah, blah. And then even even worse so, and I am genuinely sort of disgusted by this in the space, but like meme coins where they're sort of hiding whatever. And I think the worst ones would be, the meme coins that shoot up and then they take 30k profit in a few minutes, which sounds insane, and they rug instantly. But almost the worst ones are like where you find out all this kind of like dodgy stuff after they're like 100 million and things like this. So the thing that stood out for me, with Monad was, and obviously it's not that I saw Bill's face, but it was that Keanu was just sort of like front and center and just saying, "I'm building this, we're making this." Bill's hosting these poker tournaments, and it was obviously long before I think Intern and Tunes were on board, and yourself, Danny. Like maybe you were in the sort of community back then, but it was this thing of like, okay, This one feels a bit different. Like this feels a bit special to me personally. And obviously, you start to look into it and you go, but I think the thing that I found bullish at the time was someone within my group who's, I think, listening now, Happy, was just kind of said to me about Monad, and he was just like, it's just amazing. And these guys are building, and he sort of said, nothing's going to happen. And this was, bearing in mind, this was probably like January last year, like as in it would be, and he said, no, I don't even think it'll come out till November. And I was like, that is the most bullish thing I've ever heard. Because I was like, everybody else makes things in 25 minutes and just pumps them out, don't they? And just sort of, yeah, we've released it. We've got testnet. Let's go. And like, obviously you've got Berachain who's taken a while. Like I remember sort of fighting your way into that Discord when Berachain got some sort of hype around it. But Monad at the time was like, there wasn't that many members in the Discord. I think following on Facebook was like, following on Twitter was like, I don't know, 15,000 or something, maybe less. And I was like, okay, this feels like one that you can enter and isn't going to get over. And I think it's funny now as we move to this point where, you've got a lot of people who are starting to feel very bullish on it and sort of, and people are, it's funny that thing of, as you get more popular, you're bound to get more haters. Like I remember when I first started and I had like maybe 2,000 followers and I said, I can tell I'm not big because none of you hate me yet. And it got like a ton of likes because all of the influencers and stuff in the space who've been around a while, your Gainsies and stuff like that, really cottoned on to this tweet because it was like, yeah, like once you get big, you get people, and I've seen stuff now around Monad and people going, oh, Monad, like say, and oh, it's the influencer chain and all this stuff. And it's like, at the end of the day, that's what happens if you build for a while. But yeah, I just, and then look, obviously I listen to Kiene and a bunch of spaces and a bunch of podcasts and stuff like that. And my understanding, like I am strongly of the belief that crypto is the future of, which sounds so stupid to say, but I am strongly of the belief that crypto is like the future of finance in some capacity, right? It makes logical sense to be custodian of your own wallet and all these things. And obviously people will still veer towards centralization, just as we're all everything's decentralized and then we all stick it in Blast or Eigenlayer. So we all give it back and make it centralized again, which is all kind of stupid, but that's bound to happen. But I think the core of me recognizes, okay, Ethereum is awesome and it's shown how it can be done, but it cannot scale. Ethereum cannot scale to the level of, world domination, right? So then you look and you go, okay, so will people do L2s? And it's like, L2s just feel that awkward removal. And obviously I used Arbitrum, and the first time I used Arbitrum, I was blown away, by the low fees and stuff, but like kind of like that bridge concept and like the sort of like, it's just awkward. And as you look and think about it and you go, Ethereum's like, I don't know, whatever, 10 years old or whatever it is at this point, 8 years old. And you kind of go, okay, well, naturally technology will have advanced since this was created, right? Naturally, we will have moved forward in how things are done. And so someone has to take that crown. Now, Sol, obviously Solana, you've got a lot of people love Sol, and like, I think Sol's great. But I think the truth is there's a kind of stink on Sol. There's a stink on it that I think comes from SBF and FTX. Like as in, there's just kind of this hesitance. I think it's got an amazing sort of community feel, and obviously it's got Ansem talking about it every 15 seconds. Like, but I think Sol as a thing is absolutely like as in capable of all these things, and I think they've got the apps and infrastructure. Like Phantom Wallet, I still remember first using on my phone because I do a lot on my phone. I was like, oh my God, this is so much better. Like, this is unreal. But I think that there's still a crown to be taken. And I think as I learned about Monad, as I learned about these things, and my technical ability is not that high, but as soon as I learned a little bit more about how it all functions, I was a bit like, okay, this feels different and special, and something I could see doing really well. Like just that concept of scalability for large, to the transaction speeds and all those things. And I know those things exist on Sol, but I think there's just that that centralization fear on Sol is just so high, and I think there's just a hesitance around it. I think, in truth, I don't think we see mass adoption personally, and I think I've seen a lot of takes like this. That this isn't my exclusive take, but I don't think we see mass adoption until you don't know that you're using the blockchain. I don't think we actually see it until you don't know what's happening. The same as I don't functionally know how my bank works, like at the core level.
Yeah.
I don't actually understand. I just use it like it's just there. Okay, I've never gone, oh, well, what happens when I transfer from this bank to another bank? Like, what actually occurs? Like, I've never questioned it. And I think that's the sort of, when we talk about retail arriving, I don't think retail is going to come on chain. I think retail is going to be brought on by it naturally existing in, and I do think a sort of gateway to that will be things like games and being able to carry skins from one thing to another and it being on chain and you not even knowing that you're doing it. And so Sol and Monad are capable of that, but ETH to me just is not. And so you've got to have, I guess, faith in something being that one to kind of, turn the corner and whatever. So that was a very long answer to a question.
No, I think we actually have a lot of overlap in our views of what that looks like and how it happens. And also Monad's role in it. I think that there are going to be a lot of things that have never been seen before in crypto, which will come about with Monad's launch, either on day one or shortly thereafter. So,
but then the truth is that the influencer chain thing, like you've got to look, okay, so you've got Tunes and Intern. Intern, I know, this is the thing when you do your research. I know what Tunes and Intern have sort of given up to work for Monad. Now, you can see that as Monad pulling in influencers, or you can see that as people who have been in the space for a long time and know a lot are confident enough to back this, to give up whatever they had before. And to me, influencers jumping to it, influencers, one of the things that you learn, I'm not saying I'm one at all yet, one of the things you learn, they're the most friggin' terminally online people in the whole space. They are just relentless, right? The thing is, you've got all these people with 200,000 followers or whatever. They are still the fastest on the DMs. They are still the quickest. You message someone with 200 followers and they're just getting on their normal life. They're not checking it. So the thing is, someone who's so tapped in, like, the likes of Intern and Tunes, them being bullish on a thing, like bullish in their own heart, not bullish because they got some whatever seed round or token. Like, no one waits for 20 months because, you know what I mean? Like, no one waits for that long if it's a passing thing. So, like, the fact is you can allow other people, in my mind, to do the research for you to a certain extent of, oh, okay, this is interesting. Like other example is like Oh Baby Games. You've got decent people looking at and on that. And at that point, you have to go, okay, why? Like CL obviously put in an investment with it, appears as a character. But CL was like, oh, shit, this is good. Like, as in what's going on. And at that point, you should pay attention. You shouldn't steer away because the influencers are involved. That's when you steer in.
Yeah, and I think that Pass ET or Pass as a founder, too, has done an amazing job with Oh Baby Games. There are a lot of things that go into it, right? Like why you really, really like a project and think that it will do well. Team is a ton of it. What they're building is a ton of it. There's just like probably like an uncountable number of variables that are that go into the equation. So yeah, Bold, really appreciate the time so far. I would say we have to wrap. We have one question that Danny and I have shamelessly ripped from Up Only, the most legendary crypto podcast to date. It is the final alpha, and we like to ask this question, and I will ramble for a little bit on what it means to give you a little bit of time to think as well. But final alpha, essentially anything that like you've learned in your journey so far that you think someone else might be able to, listen to this, walk away with. It might be like the single thing that they remember from the show. It may be something to make them healthier, wealthier, or wiser, or not, right? It could be any form of joke, but yeah, anything that you've kind of picked up along your journey so far, that you kind of like to share as a closing thought.
Look, I'd say I don't know. Look, I could go the traditional. One of my things was going to be take profit, but that's been done. I remember that. Brilliant, isn't it? Jim who does that speech.
Yeah,
That was
profit.
just absolutely sensational. And I just love the anger with which he says it. Stop round tripping your generational entries. But no, for me, do you know what? One of the bits of advice would actually be like, how to, if you're really keen to approach an influencer in some capacity, like how to approach them. Because for me, I was like cold calling for the longest time, trying to get people to follow me and to talk to me. And I would send a message to so many people. And it's embarrassing now in a way as I look back, but I would send messages saying like, hey, I'm doing comics. I think you'll like them. I would literally say, if you don't like them, block me. And that was like my line. And it's funny now, I get people who follow me. And then obviously when you follow someone, any messages that they've sent to you in the past then jump to their inbox. They like enter their inbox. And the funniest one I had the other day was like Zagabond just followed me. And I'd sent a message in like January of 2023 saying, if you don't like what I'm doing, like block me. And he was like, yeah, I like it. Like a year and a bit later. And the truth is, I think if you're wanting to, in some capacity, approach an influencer, if you've got a project, whatever, don't ask them for something, offer them something, would be my advice. Because if you're offering nothing, and if the thing that you're offering, like, let's be real, and I've been there, is like a whitelist for your crappy NFT project, that's not really offering anything. That's just trying to get promotion, right? But just don't come at these people, when they are people, with a sort of extractive mindset. Come at it with an offering mindset, and I think the results are better in general. For me, I would say I was trying for the longest time to kind of be something and do something, and it wasn't until I offered something and then people came to me. Like I remember getting followed by Kobe and blah blah blah, and there was no chance that was going to happen in that previous set of where I'm just asking of people. Once you offer things, and you know, there's some great people who write threads, and there's some great people who write newsletters and blah blah blah. Offer something. Like, I'm not saying please don't do comics and rip me off and eat my pie, right? But offer something instead of take something would be my advice if you're trying to solve. And that goes for anyone. And then a lot more people will come as well, as you've seen with me. Like I would just say, yeah, offer things, contribute. Like whether that be, like I used to host movie quizzes in Discords. Like this is going way back, but I just used to write movie quizzes in Discords, and I used to do emoji movie quizzes and stuff. Just offer things, because then people like you. The amount of people I see just trying to extract, when the messages that I get now that are just extraction, yeah. So yeah, there you go. That's a new bit of advice.
Or that is alpha. A new bit of advice. For sure. That was new and refreshing. And I think a lot of the listeners can certainly take something away with that, because, you know, it certainly feels like in this space that there's people that have been around for a long time or perhaps grown a big following, and they don't feel as approachable. But, you know, at the end of the day, they're humans. They're often creators, and they're willing to collaborate if approached in the right way. And certainly that's been my experience as, you know, a smaller account on my personal, and certainly with growing the pipeline and getting some fantastic guests on here like yourself, Bold.
Well, like you had really the Ansem and all that on the other week. Like you must have the same attitude towards it of like, yeah, you just approach people and you say, hey, do you want to come on this and do this, and this is cool. But that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the turnout has been, you know, better than I ever could have imagined, seeing that we're only 3 months into this podcast, and we've had an S-tier roster of guests from all over the map. And certainly delighted to have had you on today, Bold. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to leave the construction site for a couple minutes and
I'm still on it
here on Spaces. And this episode will be released not only as a Spaces, but as a full episode of the Pipeline podcast. So for anyone tuning in by tomorrow, you'll be able to tune back and cut into any parts that you might have missed on. But yeah, thanks again, Bold. Thanks again, intern. And thanks again to everyone who joined us in the audience. Appreciate you all.
Thank you to Danny. Much appreciated, my man. Bold.
Cheers, Danny. Thank you for having me.
It was awesome talking to you.
I'll be back on when I'm asking for something from you.
Let's run it back soon.
See you.
Good night, everyone.